Rock and roll is a music genre that has a rich history, and its roots can be traced back to the early 20th century. The story of rock and roll begins with the legend of Robert Johnson, a blues musician, who is said to have sold his soul to the devil at the crossroads in exchange for his incredible musical talent. During the 1940s and 1950s, the blues evolved and gave birth to rockabilly music, a genre that combined blues, country, and rock and roll. The rockabilly culture of the 1950s was characterized by the rise of artists such as Elvis Presley, Jerry Lee Lewis, and Carl Perkins, who defined the sound of early rock and roll with their energetic and rebellious music. In the 1960s, rock and roll began to mature and diversify, with bands like the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and The Who leading the British invasion of American music. This era is often referred to as the golden age of rock and roll, and it produced many of the most famous rock legends of all time. During the 1970s, rock music continued to evolve, and the birth of heavy rock marked the beginning of the era of stadium rock. Led Zeppelin, Black Sabbath, and Deep Purple are some of the most notable bands that emerged during this time, and they influenced many other musicians who followed in their footsteps. The late 1970s saw the rise of the punk revolution, with bands like the Sex Pistols and The Clash challenging the status quo and introducing a new wave of rebellious music. Punk rock was characterized by its fast, aggressive sound and its anti-establishment lyrics, and it paved the way for many other subgenres of rock music. The 1980s saw the rise of metal bands like Metallica, Iron Maiden, and Judas Priest, who took heavy rock to new heights with their complex instrumentation, elaborate stage shows, and larger-than-life personas. Glam and hair metal bands like Guns N' Roses and Poison also emerged during this era, and they brought a new level of theatrics and showmanship to the rock and roll stage. In the 1990s, the grunge movement emerged from the Pacific Northwest, with bands like Nirvana, Soundgarden, and Pearl Jam leading the way. Grunge music was characterized by its raw, unpolished sound and its emphasis on introspective lyrics that addressed social and personal issues. Today, rock and roll continues to evolve, with new subgenres emerging and old ones continuing to influence new generations of musicians. From the garage rock revival of the early 2000s to the rise of metalcore and post-hardcore in recent years, rock and roll remains a vital and dynamic force in the world of music. And while Robert Johnson may have been the first to make a deal with the devil at the crossroads, his legacy lives on in the countless musicians who continue to push the boundaries of what rock and roll can be.